Emily was once known only as the owner of a small neighborhood diner, admired for her warm smile and the care she put into serving coffee and pancakes. But an accident, a devastating betrayal, and the abandonment of those she loved most brought her to rock bottom. What no one could have imagined is that, at the very height of her pain, a mysterious letter would change the course of her life forever, unveiling secrets, hidden fortunes, and choices powerful enough to transform not only her destiny, but that of an entire community. What unfolded afterward was something no one could predict: unexpected reunions, truths exposed, and a turning point so powerful it completely transformed Emily's life. Each choice led her down a path few would have the courage to follow. And it's this remarkable journey you'll experience here. So make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because this is a story worth living step by step. Emily was one of those people who could light up any space with a simple good morning. The diner she ran wasn't just a place for coffee and pancakes. It was a meeting point where stories crossed and friendships blossomed. Anyone who walked in felt a rare kind of warmth, as if stepping into their own living room. Born from the care she put into every detail was what kept her customers coming back. After all, it wasn't just about food, it was about belonging. Few realized how much effort hid behind that constant smile. Emily woke up before sunrise, prepared the kitchen, organized the staff, and still found time to ask, with genuine interest, how each customer was doing. This is the kind of dedication that makes all the difference in any business. When the owner gives their heart, people can feel it. Let's be honest, not everyone carries that flame. Michael, her husband, always appeared in public with the polished image of a perfect partner. He hugged Emily in front of the customers, praised the food, and even talked about teamwork. But as anyone knows, public life and private life can be two very different worlds. His smile was a carefully crafted reflection for others, but at home, the cracks were already visible. And no mask can forever hide the coldness of a heart. It's curious how so often relationships are built on a kind of stage. Emily, without noticing, played the role of the devoted, cheerful wife, while Michael embodied the proud husband. Yet, when the curtain fell, she felt the loneliness of sharing her home with someone distant. How many people today live with that? Duality, perfect life for the pictures, but a silent reality behind closed doors. At the diner, Emily found her source of energy. It was there that her customers' stories intertwined with her own. Mr. Howard, for example, always ordered a strong black coffee and told old jokes. Meanwhile, young Lisa studied in the corner table, dreaming of becoming a lawyer. Emily knew every detail, every routine. Perhaps that was the secret. When we truly care about others, we stop being just merchants and become part of someone's journey. But if, on one hand, there was all that warmth, on the other, there was a heavy absence. Michael never seemed satisfied, as if something was always missing. He came home tired, grumbling about bills, but never truly involved himself in daily battles. When someone chooses to be a spectator in their own life, they inevitably place the weight on the shoulders of those still on the stage. Emily carried more than trays of pancakes. She carried dreams, fears, responsibilities, and a deep desire to see her community thrive. She wasn't just serving food. She was serving hope with every plate. Small gestures like remembering someone's favorite order or offering a word of encouragement could completely transform a person's day. Still, there was one unsettling detail: the silence at home when Michael wasn't complaining. He was too distant, trapped in thoughts Emily could never decipher. This contrast between her vibrant public life and her cold home was starting to corrode her joy. So often we give our best to the world, yet receive only fragments inside our own homes. It's a harsh paradox, but a real one. And so Emily carried on, caught between external joys and internal absences. The diner thrived. People admired her, but the woman behind the counter was beginning to carry an invisible burden: the stage. Lights still shone bright, yet behind the scenes something was already hinting that the play was about to change. Because in life, all it takes is one moment to turn the page and bring a new scene, and Emily had no idea what was coming. On that rainy morning, Emily was driving back to the diner after running small errands. The streets were wet, headlights reflected like shattered mirrors on the asphalt, and the wind seemed to carry a silent warning.
Ow.
Inside the car, she was thinking about the day's menu and the bills piling up, never imagining that in just a few minutes her life would change forever. So often the unexpected arrives when we are least prepared for it. A slip, a sudden break, and the metallic sound of impact. It all happened far too quickly. Emily felt her body thrown forward, pain spreading like fire through every nerve. What had once been routine turned into chaos, and the world around her seemed to spin in slow motion. It's astonishing how a single second can divide life into before and after. At the hospital, the news fell like an unbearable weight. She would never walk again. Those words echoed as if time itself had stopped. The smile she always offered the world now felt distant, buried beneath an avalanche of uncertainty. In moments like these, it's not only the body that suffers, but the mind, which must relearn how to find possibility where everything seems closed off. Michael appeared at her side, worried. With gestures that seemed genuine, he held her hand, promised to stay, and said that nothing would change. Yet, deep down, Emily noticed something different in his gaze. It was as if his empathy were only a temporary visitor, soon to leave. And when the heart doesn't align with the words, the truth always comes to light. The days of recovery were long. Doctors, nurses, physical therapists, all fulfilling their roles trying to restore some sense of normalcy. But there was something harder to face than physical pain, the feeling of losing her identity. Emily had always been active, in charge of her own space, and now she found herself dependent for even the simplest tasks. This is the kind of wound that doesn't show up on scans, but eats away inside. The nights were silent and heavy with thoughts. Emily wondered what would happen to the diner, to her loyal customers, and to her own life. When routine is cut so abruptly, it feels as though the ground is ripped away, forcing us to learn how to walk even without steady legs. And in that emptiness, she began to see who would truly stand by her. Michael, though still present, grew increasingly impatient. At first, he brought flowers, adjusted her pillows, smiled at the nurses. But over time, he avoided conversations, stared at his phone more than at Emily, and answered in short phrases. The accident had not only transformed her life, but also revealed what had always been hidden in him. Emily understood that life does not ask permission to change. There is no schedule, no warning. The rain of that morning was merely the backdrop for an inevitable chapter, the test of her strength. And even while immobilized, she began to realize there was a flame inside her that no car crash could extinguish. The challenge was immense, but in a way, it was also an invitation to be reborn. And so, amid physical pain and emotional discoveries, Emily stepped into a new phase. The woman who once served coffee with a bright smile now had to learn to serve courage to herself. The road ahead would not be easy, but every difficult page in life carries within it the promise of the next chapter. And unknowingly, Emily was already moving forward, even without steps, toward the moment when the masks would begin to fall. With the diner closed, the bills began to pile up on the living room table. Emily stared at the invoices as if facing an invisible enemy. What had once been supported by her hard work now looked like a fragile house of cards on the verge of collapse. It was as if fate had taken from her not only the movement of her legs, but also the very ground beneath her life. Michael, in the midst of this, began to show his true face. No more public embraces, no more words of encouragement. Once seemed like the perfect husband, now revealed himself as cold and increasingly absent. He came home late, always with excuses ready, and avoided any conversation that involved responsibility. The mask of perfection could no longer hold. Emily, though weakened, noticed the changes. She saw the averted gazes, the forced silences, even the unfamiliar perfume lingering on his clothes. Each detail was a clue to something larger. Sometimes life doesn't reveal the truth outright, but in fragments that, when pieced together, show the whole image. And the picture forming in her mind was painful. Jessica, her best friend, began visiting less and less. The visits that once overflowed with laughter and confidences became rare and empty. Emily found it strange but never imagined the depth of betrayal hidden there. Fate seemed to have chosen a cruel path, the withdrawal of those who were supposed to be her pillars of support. Over time, the betrayal came to light. Michael, already distant, had become involved with Jessica. It was a double wound, a cut that pierced both trust and friendship. For Emily, it felt like watching two fundamental pieces of her life turn against her. The pain lay not only in the loss, but in the shattering of loyalty. Betrayal carries a corrosive power. It doesn't just destroy the relationship, it damages the very perception of who we are in the eyes of another. Emily began to ask herself, at what point she had ceased to be enough. These questions echoed in her mind, as if searching for a justification for the unjustifiable. After all, the human heart struggles to accept that sometimes the blame does not lie with us. The routine at home became even more silent. Michael came home later and later, and when present, preferred his phone to his wife's presence. Emily felt the coldness like a wall built inside her home. It was as if she were living with a stranger who, ironically, shared the same roof. The house no longer offered comfort, only emptiness. Even wounded, Emily began to realize that there was a hidden lesson in the midst of the pain. The masks falling before her showed that behind false smiles and empty promises, there was only the desire to escape. Recognizing this was painful, but it was also liberating. For the truth, however cruel, always opened space for new paths. And so, with her trust broken and her heart wounded, Emily faced reality. The husband who had once professed love and the friend who had promised loyalty were, in truth, accomplices in her suffering. The stage of her life no longer held actors, only revelations. And with each mask that fell, she drew closer to a point of no return, where abandonment was already beginning to take shape. Michael didn't take long to announce his decision. One night, without hesitation, he said he was leaving. The words were cold, almost bureaucratic, as if closing a contract. For Emily, the shock was greater than any physical pain she had ever felt. Abandonment in the midst of fragility sounded like an unjust sentence, an invisible wound opening wider. Jessica, a friend who had once been like a sister, also vanished. She stopped replying to messages, no longer answered calls. Her absence was a deafening silence. Emily realized she hadn't only lost her husband, but also the trust in a friendship she thought eternal. It was like watching two supporting pillars collapse at the same time. Alone, surrounded by memories and bills that kept arriving, Emily faced days of profound loneliness. The home that had once already felt cold was now nothing but emptiness. The walls echoed with promises that had turned into lies, and every corner of the house reminded her of the weight of having believed in bonds that couldn't withstand the first strong wind. Deep down, Michael and Jessica's abandonment carried a harsh revelation. Not everyone we choose to walk with has the courage to stay. There are those who love only when it's convenient, when everything is in order. When the scenery changes, these people reveal that commitment was never more than a well-rehearsed performance. Emily cried, but she also reflected, what is pain if not a harsh teacher? Every tear seemed to say she needed to learn how to stand. On her own, abandonment, however cruel, was also an invitation to independence, a chance to discover a strength that had never before been called to the stage. The nights were the hardest. Silence cut like a knife, and memories came uninvited. But it was in that empty space that Emily began to realize that if she wanted to survive, she would have to reframe her own story. The pain of abandonment was real, but it was also fuel for the rebirth that timidly began to take shape. Michael, when he closed the door behind him, might have thought he was freeing himself from a burden. But unknowingly, he was also opening the possibility for Emily to bloom without the chains of a lukewarm love. Abandonment, paradoxically, was a gift disguised as tragedy. A chapter that, though dark, prepared the ground for something greater. Emily understood that loneliness can be cruel, but it is also a mirror. Looking at herself, she saw the pain, but also the woman who still existed behind it. A woman who, though fallen, was still breathing and dreaming. That breath of life reminded her that not everything was lost, that something still lay ahead. And so, between tears and silence, Emily endured her harshest phase. Abandonment had stripped her of her closest bonds, but in return, revealed the need to reinvent herself. What seemed like the end was, in truth, the announcement of a new beginning still unseen. And, without knowing it, Emily was already walking toward the surprise that would once again change her life. The days went by slowly, marked by silence and loneliness, until an unexpected letter arrived in the mail. The envelope, elegant and formal, bore the name of a law firm. Emily found it strange. She had no dealings with lawyers, no lawsuits pending. When she opened it, she came across words that felt almost unreal. The document informed her of the passing of Richard Adams, a distant uncle she barely remembered. The lawyer requested her presence at a meeting to discuss matters of inheritance. Emily, suspicious, reread every line, searching for some mistake. After all, life had been so harsh lately that the idea of receiving something good seemed like a trick played by fate. Sitting in her living room, letter in hand, Emily felt a mix of disbelief and doubt. Could someone nearly forgotten in her memory leave her as heir? The words were clear, yet her heart resisted believing. Amid her recent pain, any promise of change seemed like a fantasy, and she feared letting herself be deceived. Even so, something pushed her forward. Perhaps it was curiosity, or maybe a spark of hope that refused to die out. Emily decided she would attend the meeting, even if only to clear up a misunderstanding. Deep inside, there was a call greater than she could understand at that moment. At that time, Emily's life was reduced to surviving the days, struggling with overdue bills and the loneliness that followed her everywhere. The letter appeared as an interruption in that cycle, like a door left slightly open in a dark corridor. The contrast between abandonment and possibility only made everything more confusing. The decision to meet with the lawyer was not simple. Emily knew that carrying hope could be dangerous, for the weight of disappointment is always greater when we believe too much. Yet there was also the sense that ignoring that call might mean losing a unique opportunity. And choices like these, however uncertain, shape destinies. On the appointed day, Emily dressed simply, yet with an air of dignity that left no doubt about her inner strength. As she made her way to the office, each street she crossed seemed to lead her not just to a physical address, but to a new chapter in her life. Her heart pounded, caught between fear and expectation. The law office was imposing, with shelves full of books and a solemn atmosphere. Emily was received by the lawyer, Mr. Collins, who greeted her with a firm yet cordial gaze. The environment carried a weight that blended seriousness and mystery. Everything about it told her she was about to hear something that would change the course of her story, and so, surrounded by papers and formalities, Emily prepared to discover the reason she had been called. The past, until then dormant, returned in the form of a will, and, unknowingly, she was on the verge of uncovering a secret capable of transforming her life completely. Mr. Collins, the lawyer, received Emily with formality and respect. As he opened the folder on the table, his words sounded as if they belonged to another world. Richard Adams. Her distant uncle had left her an inheritance of $100 million. Emily froze. Her mind struggled to grasp the impossible. As if life had decided to rewrite the script in a single paragraph, the impact of the news was so great that time seemed suspended. Emily, used to fighting to pay bills and staying upright in the face of hardship, now faced a wealth that felt unreal. Her heart raced, not with joy, but with doubt. Was it really true, or just another illusion ready to fall apart? Mr. Collins explained that there was, however, one condition. Emily had to keep absolute secrecy about the inheritance for 6 months. Nothing could be revealed to friends, neighbors, or family. This rule was part of her uncle's expressed wish, designed to test her prudence and her ability to handle such responsibility. The weight of silence now became as great as the fortune itself. Emily accepted, not out of ambition, but because she felt this was a mission carrying purpose. Her uncle, though distant, seemed to have seen in her something worthy of trust. And trust is a rare gift, especially when accompanied by power. The challenge now was not merely to possess the fortune, but to guard it as a vital secret. In the following days, a discreet advance was deposited into her account. The amount was enough to relieve the most urgent pressures, but not enough to draw attention. Emily paid debts, settled bills, and breathed relief for the first time in a long while. Still, she remained cautious not to raise suspicion. She was learning, step by step, to live between truth and appearance. The secrecy demanded by the will also brought deep reflection. For the first time, Emily realized that money by itself was not the final answer. True change lay in how she would use it. Wealth without purpose is merely accumulation. Wealth with intention is transformation. And deep within, she began sketching the desire to make a difference. Michael, though distant, still lingered in her life through small appearances. Emily now saw him with new eyes, recognizing the gap between genuine interest and mere convenience. The secret she carried gave her not just power, but serenity. She understood she no longer needed to prove anything to anyone, least of all to those who had abandoned her. Jessica also reappeared, suddenly curious and attentive. But Emily, strengthened by her new perspective, was no longer the same. The secret of the fortune was not just about money, but about the ability to discern who truly stood by her, and that clarity was becoming her greatest achievement. Thus, while the world around her remained unaware, Emily walked silently along a road only she knew. The inheritance was both an enigma and a burden. But within her grew the certainty that those 6 months would become a time of transformation. Seemed like a secret was, in truth, the foundation of a future that had just begun to take shape. The months of silence went by, and Emily began to find some balance in her new reality. Then, as if in a predictable script, Michael reappeared. He knocked on the door with a rehearsed smile, saying he missed her. Emily observed him calmly, as someone who sees beyond words. Her gaze, once naive, was now trained to perceive hidden intentions. Jessica also returned, bringing with her an air of false lightness. She tried to rekindle their friendship as if nothing had happened. She spoke of old memories, of past laughter, trying to build bridges over the abyss of betrayal. But Emily was no longer the same. Her wounded heart had transformed into a compass. Every false gesture was quickly identified. Michael came with stories of financial struggles, mentioning debts and unstable jobs. He tried to awaken the compassion he had so often found in her in the past. Jessica, in turn, feigned solidarity, suggesting Emily could still count on her friendship. Yet neither of them imagined that the woman before them had already learned to separate words from actions. The secret inheritance gave her security. But what strengthened Emily most was her newfound discernment. She knew that people might change. Their speeches, but rarely their essence. Michael was still the same man chasing easy paths, and Jessica, the same friend who chose convenience over loyalty. During this time, Daniel re-entered the picture. A childhood friend, loyal and sincere, he offered support without expecting anything in return. Unlike Michael and Jessica, he sought no advantage. He brought words of encouragement, helped with small tasks, and, above all, offered genuine presence. In him, Emily found a reminder that true bonds still existed. Her encounters with Daniel rekindled something long forgotten, the feeling of genuine trust. He reminded her of simpler days, when the value of people wasn't measured by interest, but by sincere gestures. This difference was so clear that, beside him, Emily felt peace, even amid the storm she was still facing. Michael and Jessica, however, persisted in returning. Phone calls, messages, unexpected visits, attempts to draw near again. Emily, serene, listened, but was not deceived. There was no longer room for lies in her life. The secret fortune protected her. But it was her inner strength that now built walls against the past. Each encounter served as a reminder. Sometimes ghosts return not to haunt us, but to test us. Emily knew that yielding would mean returning too, a cycle of pain and dependency. And remaining firm, on the other hand, meant reaffirming the new woman emerging from within her. And that choice, though silent, marked the beginning of her definitive liberation. And so, between unwanted reunions and sincere friendships, Emily discovered the difference between true bonds and illusory chains. The ghosts of the past still tried to linger, but she had already learned to see through the shadows. The future, silent and mysterious, was beginning to take shape, and each step she took brought her closer to new beginnings. With Daniel's quiet support, Emily began to rediscover her own strength. He encouraged her to return to the kitchen, the place where she had always felt alive. At first, fear of failure held her back, but the moment she smelled a batch of cookies baking, she realized her talent had never left. It was like finding a forgotten piece of herself. Emily decided to turn that spark into something greater. She started a small online business, offering homemade sweets and savory treats. Each order meant more than a sale. It was a symbol of resilience. She served customers with care, wrapping each package as if it were a gift. It wasn't just selling food, she was selling comfort and hope in the form of flavor. At first, the orders were few. But soon, the quality and love she poured into her products began spreading through the neighborhood. Positive comments appeared on social media, and even strangers sought out her creations. Emily felt that she was finally building something new, step by step, without needing to rely on anyone else. The money she earned was modest, yet it marked personal victories. She could pay a bill with ease, buy better ingredients, or invest in prettier packaging. To some, it might have seemed small. To her, it was monumental. Each coin represented the triumph of not giving up, even in the face of pain. Beyond that, Emily began quietly helping families in need. She used part of her inheritance advance to buy groceries, pay overdue bills, and even fund schooling for children with no means. She did it all anonymously, without seeking recognition. It was as though she were secretly fulfilling the generous wish of her Uncle Richard. These acts of kindness gave her something money could never buy: inner peace. Seeing a mother's relief when receiving help, or the joy of a child with new shoes, Emily realized her pain had become fuel for spreading hope. She now understood that true wealth isn't in what we accumulate, but in what we share. Daniel witnessed this transformation. He often accompanied her on deliveries, helped carry boxes, or simply stayed by her side while she cooked. His presence was a constant reminder that starting over didn't mean being alone. Emily discovered that small victories grew bigger when shared with someone who celebrated them with her. Customers began sending her heartfelt messages, praising not only the flavors, but the dedication shining through in every detail. Emily, who had once seen herself only as a victim of circumstances, was now recognized as an entrepreneur, a fighter, an inspiration. This shift in identity restored something essential: her dignity. And so, between recipes and acts of kindness, Emily rebuilt her life. Small beginnings, which to others might have seemed insignificant, became monuments of courage to her. And as she mixed flour and sugar, she learned that every new stage was only the prelude to something far greater still to come. 6 months had passed, and the secret had finally come to an end. Emily officially received the full inheritance left by Richard Adams. Now, the resources almost unimaginable, she wasn't thinking of luxury or extravagance. Her eyes were fixed on the future, on what she could build not only for herself, but for everyone around her. With her heart full of purpose, Emily decided to open a new diner. It wouldn't just be a restaurant, but a place of warmth, modern and vibrant, where every detail expressed care. She wanted people, upon walking through its doors, to feel at home. This place would reflect her resilience and the generosity she had inherited from her uncle. Emily hired single mothers, people with disabilities, and workers in vulnerable situations. In each of them, she saw the same opportunity for a new beginning that she herself had once received. She didn't choose employees only for their experience, but for the spark in their eyes, the desire to change their lives. Every hire was a statement. Everyone deserves a second chance. The new diner quickly came to life. Tables bathed in soft light, walls decorated with photographs of the community, and an open kitchen letting the aroma of food drift into the air. Emily didn't want to just serve coffee, pancakes, and sandwiches. She wanted to serve hope, dignity, and belonging with every dish. With the inheritance, she also created a charitable foundation. The goal was clear: to support struggling families, fund scholarships, and develop training programs. Emily knew money could be spent, but opportunities generated, multiply, and become legacies. Each initiative was a solid brick in the construction of something greater than herself. Daniel, always by her side, shared each decision with enthusiasm and support. He helped organize, suggested ideas, and above all, celebrated with Emily the joy of seeing lives transformed. Their partnership went far beyond friendship. It was the union of two hearts that believed in the power of new beginnings. The diners. Impact was immediate. People who had once been invisible to society now found dignity in work. Customers became loyal not only for the quality of the food, but for the unique atmosphere of humanity the place radiated. Emily knew she hadn't just opened a restaurant, but a symbol of hope for the entire community. Michael and Jessica, from a distance, watched the success. While they faced their own hardships, they saw Emily rise as a beacon. The contrast was clear. The one who had been left behind was now leading, not with arrogance, but with compassion. Once again, destiny showed that every abandonment can turn into momentum. And so, the new diner became a gathering place, a space for rebuilding, and above all, a reflection of Emily's journey. What had begun in pain and loneliness was now turning into collective impact. Deep down, Emily knew this was only the beginning. Her true legacy was just starting to be written. The day of the new diner's grand opening arrived as a milestone. The entire community showed up, curious and emotional. The air was filled with familiar aromas and laughter that echoed like music. Emily, seated in her wheelchair, greeted each person with a warm smile. That moment was more than the opening of a restaurant. It was the celebration of a life rebuilt. The diner's walls displayed photographs of the community, stories of resilience, and artworks reminding everyone of the importance of solidarity. Customers didn't come just to eat, but to feel part of something greater. The space was welcoming, modern, and full of life. Emily had managed to transform a simple business into a true home for all who walked in the middle of the celebration. Michael and Jessica appeared. Their faces showed defeat, their words carefully rehearsed as they asked for help. They tried to appeal to the compassion they once knew so well in Emily, but she was no longer the vulnerable woman she had been. She looked at them with firmness, not with anger, but with the serenity of someone who had already freed herself from the past. Emily didn't humiliate them, but made it clear that her life had taken a different path. She explained that the diner and the foundation weren't places for personal interests, but for those who truly wanted to change. The power of her words wasn't in their tone, but in the truth they carried. And with that response, Michael and Jessica realized they no longer had a place in her story. At Daniel's side, Emily radiated peace. He stayed close, proud, not just of the diner's success, but of the woman she had become. Their partnership was visible to everyone, not only as a union of hearts, but as the building of a shared purpose. The impact of the opening spread quickly. Local newspapers covered the diner's launch, highlighting not only the beauty of the space, but also the powerful social mission behind it. Emily became a symbol of resilience. It's an inspiration for those facing hardships and unsure of where to begin again. For the community, Emily was more than an entrepreneur. She was living proof that pain can be transformed into legacy. People who came into her diner left not only with full plates, but with stories of hope. Every table stood as a testament that it is possible to rise again from one's own ruins. Michael and Jessica left the place with their heads down, while Emily remained steady, looking ahead. The past no longer had power over her. Diner, the foundation, and the love blossoming beside Daniel were her ultimate answer to the pain life had once inflicted. Her victory was not only personal, it was collective. And so Emily's name began to echo beyond the neighborhoods, borders. Her journey inspired not just those who knew her, but everyone who heard her story. From victim to victor, from abandonment to legacy, Emily showed that life can be reinvented. And in that moment, she knew her true purpose was only just beginning. Emily's story proves that no matter the depth of pain or loss, there is always a chance to turn ruins into new beginnings. The abandonment that once seemed like the end became the start of a legacy. It shows us that true power doesn't lie in avoiding the falls, but in learning how to rise from them with greater strength and purpose. So let me ask you, how many times have you stopped believing you could start over? Maybe it's time to write the next chapter of your own life. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep following stories that will inspire you to see that there is always a new path waiting for you.